Emily Sanders was used to quiet evenings. Her small apartment on the edge of Seattle felt like a bubble where time moved slower. She spent her weekdays buried in office work, answering emails and fixing reports that no one seemed to notice. By Friday night, her body wanted rest, but her heart wanted something more, something she couldn't quite name. The city lights outside her window flickered against the glass, and the soft hum of cars below made her living room feel smaller than usual. She sat on the couch with a half-empty mug of tea and stared at the fading daisies she had bought earlier that week. They were drooping now, petals curling in on themselves like tired hands. She sighed, wondering when her life had started to feel so quiet. Just as she reached to turn off the lamp, a knock came at her doorlight, hesitant, almost unsure. For a second, she thought she imagined it. But then it came again. Emily frowned, brushed her hair back, and walked to the door. When she opened it, she froze. Standing there in a gray sweater damp from the misty night air was Ryan Miller. He worked with her at the marketing firm, a kind man with easy charm, brown hair that always fell a little out of place, and a smile that could make any bad day feel lighter. But she wasn't expecting him, not tonight, not ever like this. "Hey," he said softly, holding out a small bouquet wrapped in paper. Tulips fresh, simple, and bright against the night. "Thought you could use something to cheer you up? You've been buried in work lately." For a moment, Emily just stared at the flowers, her mind blank. No one had brought her flowers in years. "Ryan, that's so kind. You didn't have to." He gave a small shrug. "Maybe not, but I wanted to." Something about his tone, warm but quiet, made her chest tighten. She stepped aside, motioning him in. "Come in before you catch a cold." The air in her apartment smelled faintly of chamomile and paper. Ryan looked around, noticing the stack of documents on her table and the flickering candle beside them. "Still working?" he asked with a smile. "Trying not to," she said, setting the flowers gently in a vase. "But I'm bad at relaxing," he chuckled. "That's not new. You're the only person I know who answers emails at midnight." Emily smiled despite herself. It felt nice having him there, filling the silence she'd grown too used to. They moved to the couch and she poured him some tea. It was all so normal to friends talking, but there was an undercurrent beneath it. Every word felt slower, heavier. Ryan asked about her week, about the project they'd been working on, about whether she'd eaten anything besides takeout. The way he looked at her, steady and kind, made her heart beat faster than she wanted it to. As they talked, the room warmed. Laughter came easily, and Emily found herself leaning in without realizing it. She had always liked Ryan, his patience, his quiet confidence, but she had buried those feelings under layers of practicality. He was her colleague, her friend, someone safe. Yet tonight, with the soft lamplight touching his face and his voice low and calm, she wondered if there was more. Just when the moment felt still and tender, a small voice cut through the quiet. "Miss Emily." Emily turned toward the open door, startled. There stood Ethan, her 6-year-old neighbor, wearing superhero pajamas and holding a toy car. His eyes were wide and curious, flicking between her and Ryan. "Is that your boyfriend?" he asked with total innocence. Emily froze. Ryan blinked. For a long second, no one spoke. Then Ryan laughed softly, the kind of laugh that fills a room. Emily's face turned bright red. "Ethan, sweetie," she said, trying not to sound too flustered, "it's late. Shouldn't you be in bed?" Ethan grinned, clearly pleased that he'd caused a reaction. "Mom said I could say goodnight. I saw someone at your door." He turned to Ryan, his tone serious. "You brought flowers. My dad does that when he's in trouble." Ryan bit his lip to keep from laughing. Emily covered her face with her hands, shaking her head. "He's not in trouble, Ethan. He's just being nice." The boy nodded, as if that explained everything. "Okay. Good night, Miss Emily. Good night, Mr. Flowers." And before she could reply, he ran back down the hall, his footsteps echoing away. When Emily looked back at Ryan, he was smiling in that quiet, amused way she had come to love. "Mr. Flowers," he said with a chuckle, "that's a new one." She rolled her eyes but couldn't stop the smile tugging at her lips. I'm so sorry. He's curious about everything. I don't mind, Ryan said. His tone softened. He's not wrong, though. Maybe I am a little bit in trouble. Emily tilted her head, curious. Oh, and why's that? He looked at her for a moment as if weighing his words. Because I didn't just bring flowers to be nice. I just wanted to see you. The air felt suddenly still. Emily's heart skipped, and she had to look away. Her hands fidgeted with the edge of her sleeve. Ryan? She began, unsure of what to say, unsure of what she even wanted to say. But before she could finish, Ryan smiled and stood up, slipping his hands into his pockets. I should let you rest. It's late. She followed him to the door, still feeling the warmth of his words in her chest. Thank you for the flowers, she said softly. He gave her one last look, gentle and unreadable. You're welcome, Emily. Have a good night. And then he was gone, leaving behind the faint scent of rain and tulips. Emily closed the door slowly and leaned against it, her pulse still racing. The apartment felt different now, less empty, more alive. She turned toward the vase where the tulips stood proudly under the light. They were bright and full of color, like the tired daisies she'd kept before. For the first time in months, Emily felt something stir inside her, a spark of hope. Or maybe fear, or maybe both. Ryan's visit had seemed simple, kind, innocent even. But the way he looked at her, the way he said he wanted to see her, that lingered dot as she stood there. Staring at the flowers, she realized she couldn't stop smiling. Maybe Ethan's question wasn't so far-fetched after all. Maybe this was the beginning of something she hadn't dared to imagine. And yet, deep down, Emily knew this feeling. This feeling, this warmth came with risk. Because when the heart starts to wake up, it never goes back to sleep quietly. She turned off the light, leaving only the glow of the street lamps painting the tulips gold. Outside, the city kept moving, unaware that inside one small apartment, a quiet woman was finally daring to feel again. And somewhere down the hall, a little boy was probably telling his mother that Miss Emily's friend brought her flowers completely, unaware that his innocent words had just changed everything the morning after. Ryan's visit felt strangely different for Emily. The city outside was alive, with weekend sounds, cars rushing by, children laughing, someone walking their dog butt inside her small apartment. Everything was still. The tulips Ryan had brought stood proudly on her table, fresh and colorful. And every time she looked at them, her heart fluttered. She told herself not to read too much into it. But the memory of his smile, the softness in his voice, the way he'd said, I just wanted to see you. It all replayed in her mind like a song she couldn't stop hearing. She tried to distract herself by cleaning, making breakfast, even reading, but nothing worked. Her thoughts always circled back to Ryan. What did he mean? Was it just kindness or something more? By the time she made herself a cup of coffee, she realized she hadn't stopped smiling all morning, and that scared her a little. Emily wasn't used to this kind of hope. Hope meant risk, and risk meant heartbreak. As she was placing her mug on the windowsill, something small rolled under her door, a toy truck, red and slightly worn. She smiled immediately. Ethan, the little boy who had called Ryan Mr. Flowers the night before. She bent down, picked up the toy, and decided to return it before his mom came looking. When she stepped into the hallway, she found Ethan sitting cross-legged on the floor, humming to himself. You dropped your truck again, she said with a grin. He looked up with his big brown eyes and smiled. Thanks, Miss Emily. Did your flowers sleep okay? Emily laughed softly. I think they did. They're still standing tall. Ethan leaned forward, resting his chin on his hands. You looked happy last night, he said, his voice simple but curious. You never look that happy when you're alone. Her smile faded just a little. You think so? He nodded seriously, like a little old man giving advice. My mom says people smile different when they like someone. You were smiling like that. Emily blinked, unsure what to say. The honesty of children could be both sweet and unsettling. Your mom is very smart, she finally said. Ethan grinned proudly. She also says, boys bring flowers when they want you to know something. Did he tell you what he wanted? Her heart gave a strange twist. Did he? She thought. Maybe he had, and maybe she just hadn't been ready to believe it. Not yet, she said gently. But maybe he will. Otten's grin widened. Good. You looked pretty when you were laughing. And with that, he ran off toward his apartment, leaving Emily standing there, completely still, her thoughts spinning. When she went back inside, she stared at the tulips again. Ethan's words echoed in her head. People smile different when they like someone. Was it possible that Ryan liked her? Really liked her. The idea made her heart race in a way she hadn't felt in years. She sat down and reached for her phone. No messages. For a moment, she wondered if she should text him first. Then her phone buzzed and she almost dropped it. Ryan, hey, any chance you're free for coffee tomorrow morning? There's this new place near the pier I've been wanting to try. Her fingers hesitated over the screen, but only for a second. I'd like that, she typed back. The rest of the day passed in a blur. She met her neighbor briefly in the hallway, did laundry, and tried to convince herself to calm down. But inside, her nerves were dancing. She hadn't been on a real date in almost 3 years, not since her last relationship ended quietly and painfully. Back then, she had promised herself that work would be enough, that stability was safer than love. But Ryan had a way of breaking through her walls without even trying. When Sunday morning came, the sky was gray and the air smelled like rain. Emily stood in front of her mirror, second-guessing everything she wore. Too casual. Too formal. She finally settled on a cream sweater and jeans, comfortable, warm, simple. As she grabbed her coat, she noticed one of the tulip petals had fallen onto the table. She picked it up and smiled softly, tucking it into her pocket like a quiet reminder of last night. The cafe Ryan had chosen was small, tucked between a bookstore and a bakery. When she walked in, the bell above the door chimed. And she saw him sitting by the window, a cup of coffee already in front of him. He looked up and smiled the moment he saw her. And just like that, her nerves melted. Hey, he said as she sat down. You came. I almost didn't, she admitted honestly. Wrapping her hands around the warm mug the waiter set down for her. I was nervous. His eyebrows lifted slightly. Nervous. About me? She gave a small laugh. Maybe you don't usually show up at people's doors with flowers? He smiled, leaning back in his chair. True, but you looked like you needed them. Then his tone softened. Actually, I think I needed to give them more. Emily tilted her head. What do you mean? Ryan took a breath, his gaze steady. Emily, you've been my friend for a while. You're kind, smart, and you make every terrible day at work a little better. But the truth is, I didn't just bring flowers because I was being nice. I've wanted to do that for months. I just didn't know how to say it. Her heart stopped for a beat. She wasn't sure she was breathing. The cafe noise around them seemed to fade. Ryan? She whispered, unsure what to say next. He smiled faintly. You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. No pressure. Before she could respond, the door chimed again. She turned and her eyes widened. Walking into the cafe was none other than Ethan holding his mother's hand. The boy spotted her instantly and lit up. Miss Emily. He shouted across the cafe, drawing a few amused looks. He ran straight to her table, his little sneakers squeaking against the floor. I told you he liked you. Ryan blinked in surprise while Emily froze, her cheeks burning. Ethan. His mother called, rushing after him. I'm so sorry, but Ryan just laughed. That deep, warm laugh that made Emily's heart melt. He's fine, he said. And he's very observant. Ethan grinned proudly. Told you. Then his mom ushered him away, apologizing again, and soon the cafe door closed behind them. For a moment, Emily and Ryan just sat there, both speechless. Then Ryan looked at her and smiled softly. So, seems like your neighbor's son figured it out before either of us did. Emily covered her face, laughing in embarrassment. Oh my gosh, I'm never going to hear the end of this. Maybe you should thank him, Ryan said with a grin. He just made my morning easier. Emily looked up at him, her heart lighter than it had been in years. Easier? She asked, teasing. He leaned closer, his voice low but warm. Yeah, because now I don't have to pretend I'm just your friend. And for the first time, Emily didn't run from the feeling. She met his eyes and smiled a real unguarded smile. And it felt like something inside her had finally opened. Outside, the rain began to fall, soft and steady. Inside, for the first time in a long while, Emily didn't feel alone. She felt seen. She felt wanted. And as she looked at Ryan across the table, she realized Ethan was right all along. Sometimes the truth isn't spoken by the people you expect it, comes from the small, honest voice of a child who can see love long before the adults do. Rain drizzled over Seattle as Emily walked quickly toward the cafe where Ryan had asked to meet again. The air was cool, the kind that carried both freshness and nervous energy. She could still feel the echoes of their last conversation, the laughter, the confession, and that awkward but sweet interruption by little Ethan. That moment had replayed in her head a dozen times, and every time it left her with a flutter in her chest she couldn't quite calm. The cafe was quiet when she arrived, its warm lights glowing against the gray morning. She spotted Ryan by the window again, this time with 2 steaming cups already waiting. He stood as she approached, smiling in that soft, familiar way that made everything around her feel easier. "Hey," he said, his voice gentle. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I almost didn't," she admitted, taking her seat. "But then I realized I wanted to see you more than I wanted to avoid feeling nervous." Ryan laughed quietly. "I'll take that as a compliment." It was easy between them, more than she expected. The conversation drifted from work to movies, from the best coffee in the city to childhood stories. Emily felt herself relax, smiling in ways she hadn't in a long time. Yet beneath the easy laughter, there was something unspoken hovering in the air. Every time their eyes met, it lingered a little longer. At one point. The rain outside grew heavier, tapping steadily against the window. Emily watched it fall, her thoughts scattered. "You know," she said softly, "I used to love the rain, but lately it just feels lonely." Ryan tilted his head, studying her. "What changed?" She gave a small shrug. "Maybe nothing. Maybe I just got used to quiet evenings and unfinished conversations." He looked down for a moment, then back up at her. "Emily, can I tell you something honest?" Her heart skipped. "Of course." He took a slow breath, as if choosing his words carefully. "That night I brought you flowers. I didn't plan it. I was driving home from work and I saw that flower shop near your street. I don't even know why I stopped. But when I did, it just felt right, like I was supposed to." She blinked, taken aback by his openness. "Supposed to?" Ryan smiled faintly. "Yeah, you've been in my head for months, Emily. I kept telling myself it was just friendship, but it's not. You're the first person I want to talk to when something good happens. The person I think about when I can't sleep." His voice softened. "You make everything feel lighter. I don't know when it happened, but I care about you. More than I probably should." Emily's breath caught. She stared at him, unsure whether to speak or just let her heart absorb every word. "Ryan." She started, but her voice cracked. He reached across the table, not to grab her hand, but just close enough for her to feel the warmth of his presence. "You don't have to say anything," he said. "I just needed you to know. No expectations. Just the truth." Her chest tightened with emotion. It had been years since anyone had spoken to her like that, gently, honestly, without games. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of the rain filled the silence between them, steady and soft. Then, as if fate decided the moment was to still, the door of the cafe opened and in ran Ethan, again holding his mother's hand. His eyes brightened the instant he saw Emily. "Miss Emily," he called, rushing forward. "You're here with Mr. Flowers again." A few customers turned, smiling at the little boy's excitement. Emily felt her face flush. Ryan tried not to laugh but failed miserably. "Hey, buddy," he said kindly. "You like this place too?" Ethan nodded, climbing onto the chair next to Emily before his mom could stop him. "Mom said we could get cookies. But I saw you first. Are you two on a date?" Emily covered her face, wishing the floor would open up and swah, you can't just ask people that. "But why?" he asked innocently. "You look like people on dates in movies." Ryan looked at her with amusement in his eyes. "He's got a point," he murmured. Ethan's mother finally reached the table, red-faced but smiling apologetically. "I am so sorry, Emily. He saw you and just took off." "It's okay," Emily said quickly, smiling at her neighbor. "He's harmless." Ethan grinned proudly. "I told Miss Emily you liked her," he said to Ryan matter-of-factly. "Did you tell her yet?" Ryan leaned back, laughing openly now. "You're a good messenger, kid." "Yeah, I told her." Ethan clapped his hands like he'd just won a prize. "See, Mom? I was right." His mom sighed, shaking her head. "All right, that's enough, mister. Time for your cookie." She turned to Emily again. "Really, I'm sorry. He has no filter." As they walked away, Ethan waved enthusiastically. "Bye, Miss Emily." "Bye, Mr. Flowers." When the door finally closed behind them, the cafe returned to its usual calm. Emily and Ryan sat in silence for a moment before bursting into laughter. "I swear," Emily said between laughs, "that kid has better timing than anyone I've ever met." Ryan wiped a tear of laughter from his eye. Or worse timing, depending on how you look at it. She looked at him, her laughter fading into a softer smile. "You really told me," she said quietly. He met her gaze. "I meant every word." For the first time in a long while, Emily didn't deflect, didn't hide behind polite smiles. She let herself feel everything, the warmth, the fear, the sudden rush of something new. "You scare me a little, Ryan," she said honestly, "because I wasn't planning on this." He nodded. "Me neither." Outside, the rain slowed to a gentle drizzle, the clouds beginning to thin. Ryan glanced toward the window, then back at her. "Maybe we could take a walk." Emily hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "Yeah, I'd like that." They walked side by side down the quiet street, the wet pavement shining under the pale light. The air was cool, but neither of them seemed to mind. Their hands brushed once accidentally, then again, this time on purpose. Neither spoke much. The silence between them wasn't awkward anymore. It was peaceful, filled with everything they didn't need to say out loud. When they reached the end of the street, Ryan stopped. "You know," he said softly, "if Ethan shows up again, I might owe him a thank you." Emily laughed quietly. "For what?" "For saying what I was too afraid to." She looked up at him, her heart fluttering again. "Maybe he just has good instincts." Ryan smiled. "Then maybe we should start listening to him." They stood there for a moment, watching the water ripple in the gutter, their reflections close but not quite touching. The city around them hummed with distant traffic, soft and alive. Emily felt a calm she hadn't known in years. For the first time since meeting Ryan, she didn't feel like she had to protect her heart. She just let it beat. When they said goodbye that afternoon, it wasn't dramatic or rushed. Just a quiet promise in their eyes, a promise that this was only the beginning. And as Emily walked back to her apartment, she couldn't help but smile when she saw Ethan in the hallway later that evening, munching on a cookie. "Told you," he said with a grin. "Grown-ups are slow." Emily laughed, bending down to his level. "You might be right, kid." Because now she knew sometimes love didn't arrive with grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes it came with a few tulips, a cup of coffee, and a small boy who noticed what the adults were too scared to admit. Sarah stood at her kitchen counter, the bouquet of tulips now resting in a vase near the window. The petals had opened, soft and bright, catching the afternoon light. It had been 2 days since Ethan's unexpected visit, and her mind still played that moment over and over. The way he'd stood there, nervous but kind. The way little Jamie had said those words, "He likes you, Miss Sarah." That one sentence had turned everything upside down. Since then, Ethan hadn't come by. She'd seen him from her window that morning, helping his son carry a soccer ball to the car. He waved politely when he noticed her looking. She smiled back, but her heart twisted. Part of her wanted to open the door to say something, anything, but fear kept her still. After all, what if she had misread everything? Maybe it was just kindness. Maybe she was hoping for too much. That evening, there was a soft knock. Sarah froze. For a second, she just stared at the door, pulse quickening. Then she opened it, and there he was again, holding a small brown paper bag. "Hey," he said quietly, a shy smile tugging at his lips. "I made too much pasta. Thought you might like some?" She let out a breathy laugh. "Surprised. You're feeding me again, huh?" "Guess it's my thing now," he said, stepping inside when she moved aside. He set the bag on the counter, glancing at the tulips by the window. "They look happy here." "You do," she said softly. "They make the place feel alive." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't awkward this time. It was warm, gentle, the kind that said more than words could. Sarah finally said, "Jamie's very sweet. He really adores you." Ethan smiled, pride softening his features. "He's my world, though he tends to say things I'm not ready for." Sarah looked down, remembering that day. "He said something that caught me off guard." "I know," Ethan admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "I wanted to explain that." He hesitated, then met her eyes. "I didn't tell him to say that, but he wasn't wrong." Her heart skipped. "What do you mean?" He took a step closer, not too close, just enough for his voice to sound softer, more real. "Sarah, I moved here a few months ago, right after Jamie's mom left for a job overseas. I wasn't looking for anything new. But you?" He paused, searching for words. "You've been kind. You talk to him, to me. You make our house feel less empty. That means something." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "Ethan, I'm not saying this to make things complicated," he went on. "I just needed you to know. When Jamie said I liked you, he said what I didn't have the courage to say myself." For a second, the world seemed to hold its breath. The hum of the fridge, the ticking of the wall clock, everything faded. Sarah didn't know what to say. Her mind wanted to be careful, but her heart had already decided something long before her thoughts caught up. She smiled, a little tear escaping despite her best effort. "You really should teach your son about timing." Ethan chuckled, the tension breaking. "Trust me, I've tried." They shared a quiet laugh, the kind that felt easy and real. He handed her the bag again, as if grounding the moment. "So, about that pasta. It's nothing fancy. I'll be the judge of that," she said, opening a cabinet to grab plates. "Stay, eat with me." He hesitated only a second before nodding. "I'd like that." Dinner was simple. Pasta with tomato sauce, some bread, and 2 glasses of lemonade. But it felt special. They talked about everything. Jamie's funny school stories, Sarah's work at the small local gallery, Ethan's attempts at cooking that usually ended in disaster. The more they talked, the more she realized how much she'd missed this connection. Laughter, the feeling of being understood. When the meal was done, they stood together by the sink, washing dishes side by side. Every brush of his arm made her heart flutter. Every smile felt like sunlight. When Ethan was about to leave, Sarah walked him to the door. The night air was cool, the street quiet except for the chirping of crickets. He turned to her, his expression soft. "Thank you for letting me stay," he said. "Thank you for the flowers," she replied, her voice gentle. "And the pasta. And for being honest." "Ah." He nodded, his eyes holding hers a little longer than before. "Good night, Sarah." "Good night, Ethan." Started to walk away, then stopped halfway down the path. "Oh," he said, turning back with a faint grin. "Jamie wanted me to tell you something." He said, "Don't worry, Dad." Miss Sarah smiled when she saw the flowers. "That means she likes you too." Sarah felt warmth flood her face. She couldn't help but laugh, covering her mouth with her hand. "Your son is something else." "His," Ethan said. "He's also right sometimes." And with that, he gave her a small wave and walked home. Sarah stood there for a long time after, the smile still on her face. She closed the door, leaned against it, and looked at the tulips again. They were in full bloom now, their colors vivid against the soft kitchen light. The next morning, she woke early and found herself walking toward Ethan's house without planning to. Jamie was outside, sitting on the porch steps with his backpack. He waved excitedly. "Hi, Miss Sarah." "Hey, Jamie," she said with a grin. "Going to school?" "Yep. Daddy's getting my lunch." "Are you coming over again?" She hesitated, looking at the open door behind him, where she could see Ethan moving around the kitchen. "Maybe," she said softly. "If your dad doesn't mind." "He won't," Jamie said quickly, and she couldn't help but laugh. Ethan appeared in the doorway, noticing her. "Morning," he said, surprised but happy. "You're up early?" "So are you," she replied, her voice calm but bright. "I was just saying hi. Want some coffee?" he asked. She smiled. "I'd like that." As she stepped inside, it felt like something had quietly changed between them. Not rushed, not forced, just real. There was no grand confession, no dramatic ending. Just a people who had been through enough silence to know that sometimes love begins in the smallest moments. A kind gesture, a shared meal, a child's innocent truth. Weeks later, the tulips had begun to fade, but new ones had taken their place. Ethan brought fresh flowers every Sunday, and Jamie proudly picked one to put in Sarah's hair before running off to play. Life was simple again, but this time it felt full. And every time Sarah looked at those flowers by her window, she remembered how it all began, with a knock on the door, a nervous man holding tulips, and a little boy's words that had stopped her heart but somehow set it free.